I talk a lot about leverage, so difference between what you put in and what you get out. I know that I could say the exact same thing at $1 billion because I'll have proof or evidence that what I am saying is true.
What's the story behind this Nicorette? You're about to pop one here. What's going on?
It's my highest sign of respect.
I appreciate that. That means a lot, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, this is how I get engaged. I get ready to go. No, I've been chewing nicotine forever, honestly. When I was in high school, I did a little bit of dipping when I was a wrestler, and then I went to college and I like found chewing tobacco and dip, and I was like, this stuff's awesome. And but I never like got like addicted to it or anything like that. Right. I just chewed it like at parties or around or hanging out, but never like on a consistent basis. But I was like, man, I do like nicotine. And so I just started chewing the gum in college. And so I was like 19, 20 years old when I started chewing Nicorette because I figured I could get the buzz without the rest of the stuff. And then nowadays I think it's considered a nootropic and there's all these benefits and things like that. But I think there's fairly convincing evidence, and I'm not a science bro, but against Alzheimer's.
Yep.
And I have Alzheimer's and dementia on both sides of my family. And
yeah, same here.
So I chew Nicorette, and
I like it. Get on that kick. You know, it's preventative. It's medicine now.
Yeah, exactly. I think because the thing is the carcinogens are in the delivery mechanism, and the tobacco and the other things that they have in there rather than nicotine. It's like if we found out that coffee was bad for people, it doesn't necessarily mean that caffeine is bad for you. And so it'd be like just taking the pill form versus the drinking coffee itself. Same idea.
Yeah, I did the chewing thing for a little while when I was super young, and then I just overdid it at one point, puked at a party, and I think that was about it. So
just got to get back into it. Man.
Yeah, exactly. But now's the time, you know. Now's
Slowly
the time. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So maybe I just had to, find the right delivery mechanism. So you're on this journey to build a portfolio of companies doing over $1 billion and be worth over $1 billion. You're documenting that journey. I just want to say, first off, I'm super thankful and grateful for all the content you've made. You're incredibly generous, sharing all the kind of inside baseball, if you will. Starting off, like, why $1 billion? Why does this matter to you?
I don't think it actually does matter to me. I think it's more like it's an easy target to shoot for, and then once we're at 1, it'll be 10. You know what I mean? When it'll be 10, it'll be 30 or 50 or whatever after that. I think it's more that PBD said something that I thought was pretty interesting and insightful after he sold his company, and I don't know the exact number, but I'm guessing it was between $200 and $300 million. He sold his insurance.
PBD, sorry?
Patrick Bet-David.
Okay.
And he made this statement that one of his mentors was like, man, something's changed about you. Like, you seem more confident, you seem more certain, or whatever it was. And he said, it was just this feeling that what I was saying all this time, that I was right all along. And I think that that felt kind of profound to me. And I think that, we have a certain level of success that we've achieved up to this point. I'm obviously young in the entrepreneur game. And I know that I could say the exact same thing at $1 billion in net worth and probably have a significantly wider, broader audience because I'll have proof or evidence that what I am saying is true. And so I'm trying to build this publicly so that I think it'll be cooler to call the shot and then hit it. Yeah.
Well, no, I think it's a cool journey. I mean, I really resonate with the vibe of kind of documenting the journey because, we definitely do. Guys like us wish that, someone like a Warren Buffett had kind of documented it right from the early days beyond just the annual shareholder letters, which legendary as there's a lot of like in between there. There's messes, there's mistakes, there's, just a lot. Like, I'm curious on your journey, I think, on social media, on these videos, everything can seem all rosy. It can seem kind of easygoing, and you talk about a lot of the challenges. I'm curious, kind of over the last 6 months of your journey, what's been some of these messy situations that have come up, and how do you kind of diagnose them and get around them and keep on overcoming these?
I mean, there's all sorts of them. You know what I mean? There's vendors for companies, making promises that they can't deliver on, and it costing us, 10 plus million on one deal in hard cost. There's deals that take, 4 months to negotiate and then fall through. There's, unfortunately, based on the nature of just like when stakes get really high, you make an agreement day one, and then the company goes from, a few $1 million a year to, a few $1 million a week. People's eyes change, in terms of how they see the contribution and whatnot. And so, it's interesting because I think the actual messes are the same. It's just that the zeros are bigger. Like, you're still playing poker, whether you're playing with dollar chips or playing with $1 million chips. The game's more or less the same. It's just the stakes are higher.
And when you think about the goal of $1 billion, like, is there a date you've got in mind that you're like, this is when it's happening? And do you feel like you're on track to that?
I do think we're on track to that, which is cool. There's definitely like room for luck, which is cool. And we've definitely had a few, I'll call them lucky breaks. But to what I think somebody wrote a great article on like 4 levels of luck. I feel like you would have been exposed to something like this, but you can increase your luck surface area. And I think a lot of what we're trying to do with the content and whatnot has been to deliberately create more luck, for ourselves. And so that has worked. I think that if we were just take the actual money and just put it in the S&P and just if it compounded at whatever 9.7% for the next 40 years or 30 years, we'd hit it kind of regardless. But I'm hoping to beat that. And so if we can do it in 5 to 7, that would be pretty cool. And so that's like if my honest answer to like what are you really shooting for is probably 5 years.
5 years. And, I love that Peter Thiel kind of frame. I'm sure you've played it through your head a lot, the idea of like, what's your 5-10 year goal?
Mm-hmm.
How would you go and accomplish that in 1 year? Either dialing up like better people, better systems, better opportunities, when you think about ways to accelerate that vision, like what comes to mind?
I think it's all about opportunities. It's opportunities. Because if you think about I talk a lot about leverage. So difference between what you put in and what you get out. And there are a few things that give greater leverage than the opportunity vehicle that you're pursuing. And so if you run a local business or a restaurant, for example, you may work 80 hours a week to make that restaurant successful. If you run a platform that, creates aggregated buying power for all restaurants to buy together, and then you make some sort of spread on that, then you still probably work 80 hours a week, but you probably have a significantly larger opportunity. And so it's just like making sure that we pick the right boat, to use Warren Buffett's analogies, to be in the right boat. And I think that's where like strategy and having people who are ahead of you, because the biggest thing when I was starting out was that I just didn't understand any of this stuff. And just like how much leverage you can get on opportunity. And so it's like, if you have one successful gym, they're like, you're never going to make $100 million on one gym. It's just not going to happen. And so just stating that fact outright really does shift your behavior into like, what opportunity could I put the same 5 years into, and it could result in $100 million or $1 billion or $10 billion. And then just being ruthlessly selective about those things. And I think that from an entrepreneurship perspective, what really happens, like the rich get richer, sure, because they get smarter, but I think a lot of it is because what they choose to not pursue. And so like when I was starting out, I would be really excited about a $10,000 a month opportunity. Mm-hmm. And then, you make $100,000 a month, and then basically you can say no to everything that's below that. But then all of a sudden, other $100,000 a month opportunities seem like a double. You're like, oh my God, this could be huge. And this is where the shiny object syndrome gets really dangerous. But I don't think the shiny object syndrome really disappears ever. I think it's just the opportunities just look better. And so you can easily, you've leveled up to the point where I can say no to a $10,000 a month opportunity now, or $100,000 or even $1 million a month opportunity. But like, it's still hard to turn down a $10 million a month opportunity. Yeah. Right. And so that's where I think some of the discipline and one of the hardest parts of entrepreneurship is like knowing when to push and knowing when to pivot.
It reminds me of that Naval Ravikant quote around finding your kind of ideal hourly rate and making it super ambitious. I think there's a lot of people that undercut themselves early on, thinking that their hourly rate's $20 an hour, $100, maybe $1,000 opportunity, and trying to get that to like, say, naming a $5,000 an hour or $10,000 an hour. Now you start to look at everything a lot different, where you're spending your time, who you're hiring, the kind of tasks you delegate. And, I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with that kind of self-limiting belief that their time's not worth that much. So they'll just do that extra thing or do that themselves, when really, it's something that they should either pass on, say no to, or delegate.
Yeah. It's a really interesting frame. And just for back of napkin for everybody here, like just multiply whatever your hourly rate is by 2,000, and that's what you make per year. There's a lot of like work smarter, not harder, especially in like the Twitter sphere, which I think is where we first, connected. It's easy to say work smarter, not harder. But the problem is, in order to get smarter, you have to work hard. So it's like you have to work hard to get smart in order to then work smarter, not harder. So like you really can't avoid the hard work part. You get there one way or another.
Yeah, you can't just name that hourly rate, then just sit back and just wait for it to happen.
Yeah, this is it. I only work for $5,000 an hour. And everyone's like, okay, no, because you don't have that skill. And then that, like, okay, now where do we go? So I think you kind of earn the right. And so there's, it's just like reality is gray. It's not black and white. It's like you go into it, like you level up your skill. And then I think Peter Thiel, actually, it was, value created in the marketplace multiplied by your ability to negotiate to capture that value. The third piece that I would add to that is the amount of supply demand around the skill. So it's like there's this much skill that comes from a salesperson. This is how well the salesperson can negotiate their comp, and how many other people can do the job. And so it's like ideally you want to be able to create tremendous value have very good skills at negotiating, and have no one else who can do it. And then at that point, when you put those three things together, you can pretty much name your own price.
Yeah. And how do you think you go about like, between, over your career, it seems like you've had like a lot of amazing mentors around you. I know Russell early on was someone that was kind of key in terms of a board of advisor around you. I'm curious over your side, like we're both big on leverage, building audiences, building a moat around your business. Is there a specific point like early in your career that was like a pivotal moment that maybe changed the trajectory based on like building leverage, whether that was like people, capital, media?
Early on, not really. I think that the most valuable thing for me was to get around people who are making more money than me. And that hasn't really changed. I've always tried to get around people who make more money than me just to see what they're thinking with, what opportunities are they pursuing, what things do they say no to. And I think that's been probably the most valuable thing that I've done in terms of changing my thinking and like what frameworks I use.
And what were some of the patterns that you feel like you picked up from them?
Just the games they were playing. You know what I mean? Like I learned about the private equity game. I was like, oh wow, like the largest percentage of billionaires come from private equity. Weird. Okay. Noted. On the flip side, real estate has made more millionaires than anyone, but real estate is a far more efficient marketplace overall. And so you don't have like 100Xs, not really, in real estate, but you can do that absolutely, in the business space in a much shorter period of time. But it's definitely a higher risk, higher reward. Like the building's still there. There's still a roof. People might still rent it. But like a business can go to zero. Buildings don't really go to zero.
Yeah. And what was that epiphany that you had around the private equity space? Like, why is it that so many billionaires from that?
I think it's just more observation. So it's more like, okay, is there something that's weird here? Okay, well, let's learn about that. If this is the highest concentration of mega wealthy people, then there's probably some sort of arbitrage to this game. And there's multiple levels of arbitrage within private equity. And when you combine them together, that's when you can create these 100X outcomes. It's like, well, you can buy things for significantly less than they're worth, far more so at a discount than like real estate, for example. And then you can still lever using debt from, third-party financing. And then on top of that, you can have even more leverage by raising money to do it. So it's like somebody who has $1 million can put $1 million in, raise 100 or raise 99 to get to $100 million. And then buy, 5 businesses that are $100 million each because they put 20 million down and then they, okay, let's be realistic. Let's say they buy 3 just for, argument's sake, they put a third down on each of them. So $300 million businesses and they get bank debt for the other, 70 on each of those businesses. It's like, so one guy with $1 million just bought 3 businesses in total for $300 million. And if those businesses just grow at like, let's say a 20% rate over the next, 5 years, those businesses go from $100 million businesses to $200 million businesses. So he goes from, whatever it was, 300 to 600. Right. But he probably also bought those at a discount. So maybe they inherently were worth more than that. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, now we're at 900 million. And so then he just, he has his hurdle rate to his, his partners. He has to pay his debt back. And then after that, you just have this massive nut left over. You can take that 100 or 200 million left over for the managing partner and then just play the game again. And there's very few ways that you can do something like that within a 5 to 7 year span than anything else with so little capital. Now, people are going to only trust, somebody who might have a level of experience or saying, okay, well, I worked at a private equity fund for 10 years. I did 2 funds and I feel pretty confident I can do it. It's like, okay, well, then you can do it when you're 35 because you start when you're 20 and you get 15 years in or whatever, 2 7-year funds and you start your own. And so, yeah, like I see those types of games and I'm like, that makes sense. Like where's the huge lever opportunities that exist? Like software is obviously a big one. Like how many things can you go from 0 to $1 billion valuation in 3 years? Like you can't do that with a chain of dry cleaning stores. This is not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, okay, well, what are the nature of those things? Well, most products that have 0 cost of replication tend to have more leverage. So like media as an example, or software stuff as an example, even licensing stuff. All of those are 0 cost to replicate. And so they're just more leverage baked into the business model. And you work just as hard to build the restaurant or the dry cleaning business as you do to build the software company. You just need different knowledge. And so I think finding people who have expertise in those things helps you move faster.
It seems like another form of leverage that we both have in common over the last decade is the importance of media. You talk a lot in $100 million leads and kind of doubling down on organic content and leveraging that. I know early on in the cannabis industry with Herb, we built that 10 years ago with the goal of kind of, building a more tasteful, authentic platform to help connect kind of our brands with the best community out there in the space when it was really kind of sketchy, not a lot of good stuff out there. We talked a little bit about that a year ago.